I'd like to call the meeting of the Ordinance Committee to order. It is 6:33 p.m. And I think maybe what we'll do is just say who we are. I'm Sheila McCraven.
Dave Vogel.
Oh, Joe, I think you're on mute. If we can get you there. No, still can't hear you, but we see you. Oh, there you go.
I'm okay.
Yes. Terrific. Okay, and we also have Jerry Shaw as our clerk tonight. Thank you, Jerry, for getting us started. So I think our first motion for this evening is to accept minutes from the March 16th, 2021 meeting. And since none of us were members of the commission at this time, Jerry, is it the case that we just take a motion to accept the minutes?
Correct.
Okay.
So moved.
Excellent. Second. Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. That's a unanimous vote. Thank you. And next, we're going to receive and review the motion from the Board of Selectmen regarding town ordinances. So that was in your packet, prepared by Jerry Shaw. And we have two items that they've basically empowered us to look at tonight. One is a memo that came from the Commission on the Use of Publicly Owned Property, CUPOP, regarding litter ordinances. And then the other item that's come to us from the Board of Selectmen is to do a review of all the ordinances. So I think what we could do is get started with, oh, and here comes Jerry Weiner, I believe. Let's see if that's him. Give him a minute. But I think what we can do is start with taking a look at the litter issue. So I was the liaison from the Board of Selectmen to the CUPOP meeting, and they did speak about this a few different times. Jerry, you're on FaceTime, it looks like.
You know, I'm doing this on my phone. I don't know how I'm on FaceTime, but I couldn't get it on the computer, so I did the phone.
Okay, we can see both your computer and your face.
Yes.
All right, that's going to be highly distracting, but we'll carry on.
Well, I'll get rid of my computer there.
Yeah, maybe tap your face and see if you can just have that be the only thing on the screen.
Well, no, it just got bigger.
Oh, okay. All right. So we're taking a look at a request from CUPOP to perhaps create a town ordinance. And this, my understanding is that this would be in addition to the state law that already prohibits littering. So Jerry, can you tell us a little bit more about how that would work? If we already have a state law, this would be on top of that?
I think state law doesn't preempt the local communities from issuing litter ordinances. A little bit confusing for the police department. I don't know how they would handle it. But theoretically, you would be permitted to implement an ordinance if the Board of Selectmen felt it appropriate. It's kind of duplicative. And what I have been involved in on Ordinance Committee meetings, the Ordinance Committee generally first wants to make a determination whether there is a need for an additional law on our books. You know, we have a lot of stuff in there, and you've got to make the decision whether this is something that you want to pursue.
Okay.
And if you do, you go, you know, the drill is you go to the Board of Selectmen, you make a recommendation, the Board of Selectmen generally approves the recommendation, then it's scheduled for a public hearing.
Right. So maybe as our next step on the Ordinance Committee, we should try to hear from Chief Frank Cappiello about what the police think might be necessary, and whether, I'm assuming, Jerry, that we would be assigning the police to carry out the ordinance, or perhaps we could assign Public Works, or?
Well, I think you have much more teeth if you assign the police to do it. I don't think the Public Works are trained to go out and enforce ordinances, so I think the natural entity would be the police department.
Okay, so we should definitely hear from the chief to get his thoughts. Do members of the Ordinance Committee have additional thoughts on this matter?
Jerry, I just had a question about it. The state statute references Department of the Environmental Protection folks who would in fact issue, I guess maybe they do issue summonses. I know that the Department of Environmental Protection in many instances are in charge of policing the parks, and they sometimes hire people for that purpose. So I guess it's maybe those employees that they have do that. So do you know if that happens, and would there be any of those people in town who would be enforcement agents for the state law?
I would highly doubt whether the DEP would come down to a town like Woodbridge or any town. There are 169 towns, and if they do it for Woodbridge, I think they'll have 140 requests. So I think that that's highly unlikely. I don't know for certain, so I can't say yes or no, but I strongly, strongly doubt it. It's going to have to, if we do a local ordinance, we're going to have to enforce it ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think the police are the appropriate entity to do it.
Yeah.
And you got to ask the question, do you want the police to be bothered with trying to arrest somebody for throwing a paper out on the road as opposed to taking care of crime?
Well, and in addition, Jerry, if the state law is enough to arrest, if they literally witness someone littering and it's violating the state law, we don't need an additional ordinance. I guess one of the concerns that Kupop brought forward is that we could make the fine larger if we had an ordinance. I don't know that that's going to dissuade anyone from throwing something out, though. I think people who are littering maybe don't really think they're going to be caught, perhaps, is why they don't, they throw things out the window of their car as they're driving by. Yes, David.
I would personally not think that we would be ever wanting to put an ordinance on the books to make money, to make bigger fines that go to the town and that kind of thing. And so I think the fact that that there's something on the books is as much a deterrent as any deterrent will ever be. I don't think it's any bigger deterrent to say, oh, we're going to double your fine, or we're going to, once it's on the books, enforcement becomes the issue. And the more different things you put on the books, the far less likely any of them are to be enforced, because you don't increase the size of your police force every time you pass another batch of ordinances. It just falls on the same people, and they're going to have to prioritize, and they're going to have to remember what's serious and what's not. And so I would think that perhaps public signage or some kind of in the notices from town hall, little things about, don't litter and things like that might have more impact. I recall the anti-littering campaign from Lady Bird Johnson that was so effective back in the 60s. And that was tremendous, because the highways were just a total garbage dump until then. And and those things really made a difference, much more so than probably resting.
Yeah, and I think we do that with Rid Litter Day each spring, and there are groups of people go out and clean up the side of the road. And I think that's a really good, public information campaign that goes around that. And perhaps, so maybe what we can do is hear from Chief Capiella about his thoughts regarding whether he's already got enough law on the books about littering to enforce and doesn't need more, or perhaps he'll tell us he thinks he does need more. And then secondarily, I think we should talk about a public information campaign that really enlists the children over at Beecher Road School, and maybe community members want to adopt a street and clean it up and keep it clean and kind of have that pride of the neighborhood a little bit to help the public information. So
was there anything specific that Kupop was identifying as a particular issue that was happening in Woodbridge?
Well, there was some specific littering that was taking place over on Greenway Road, over in that section, the Baldwin Greenway area. And it's somebody who's on the Kupop Commission had been pursuing it. And didn't at first realize there was a state law, and then, you know, spoke with the police several times about some issues over there. So I'm sure she would come. I think what we perhaps can do at our next meeting, we'll ask Chief Cappiello to come, and then we can also have public comment so we can hear from anyone who's got specific concerns. Make sure we're hearing that. So does that sound like a plan for this one? I think we should schedule the next meeting and invite some expert witnesses for us.
I agree
Sounds
with
good.
that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is that good?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, Sheila, I think that your idea about cleanup, I think when people actually volunteer and get motivated to participate in beautification of the town and start to realize what's going on, they become more aware and they maybe help clean up their own habits and so forth. I've participated in that on the waterways on the Housatonic River
Yeah.
many, many times, and it's amazing what people bring to the river to throw out. So I'm
Yeah.
sure that places like some of the open spaces that we have are places that might very well get big tires and stuff like that, that we do want to take notice of and prevent that from happening, because that's
Yeah.
toxic, among other things.
Yeah.
So
Once we
I've
have a
lived-
little
I've-
bit of litter, it tends to, it cause people to put more litter there. So
So I've lived here a lot of years, like you, David, I'm sure, and I don't know, until I saw this letter, I never thought we had a litter problem. I drive around town all the time, and with the occasional, you know, cup out on the street or maybe a beer can, and that's maybe twice in 10 years that I can remember. I don't see a litter problem, but maybe I'm missing everything. I don't know.
You know, when you,
hopefully the main roads.
yeah.
Sheila, didn't we have an event in the past where we were assigned a street and we went on the street and cleaned it up,
Yes.
put it in a bag and left the bag for Public Works to pick it up?
Yes, exactly. I think we're doing it for Earth Day this, I want to say it's April 21st or April 30th. I know it went out. It's called Rid Litter Day,
April
yes.
23rd.
23rd. It was in between the two.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think that's a great
How do we sign up? How do we
communicate.
sign up? I'm there.
I think it's at the town website. You can join a team maybe. That would be neat. All
Okay.
right, so let's do that. We've got that on our agenda that we're going to discuss that impact with the police department and invite Chief Cappiello. So let's go ahead and do that. Then for number 5 on our agenda, our plan to review the current town ordinances. One thing I wanted to ask Jerry Weiner is, in the minutes that we just approved for, or we just accepted for last May, they had been looking at some ordinances about, potential ordinances about artificial turf fields and regulating PFAS and PFOS in the environment. And I guess what they did by the end of that meeting, Jerry, is they said they wanted it to be considered by the next Board of Selectmen that was going to come into office in July. That would be us. Should we perhaps ask the full Board of Selectmen what they'd like to do on that topic?
You can, you know, I remember it coming up last time, and I remember we decided not to, the Ordinance Committee decided not to do anything. I think, don't we have some regulations in effect now that control asphalt and things like that being put on the highways? Didn't we do that a few years ago, Sheila?
The anti-fracking.
That's it, yes.
Yes. That was fracking waste traveling through the town or being used on highways, yeah. So it's
So that-
similar. I guess maybe it would live in the same section of the ordinances.
Yes, yes. But they decided, the Ordinance Committee decided not to do anything, and I guess you can always bring it up again.
Yeah, that's what it says in the minutes, Jerry. It says we should leave it to the next Board of Selectmen. So that is us, and this is the first ordinance committee we've had. So what do others on ordinance think about that?
Well, I do remember when the citizens who were interested, there were citizens living next to the fields
Mm.
over there at the school who were very, very concerned about what they were seeing in their well water and the bleaching and so forth. And they wanted this ordinance to try to prevent the already approved fields from going in. And I
Yeah,
remember, Jerry, that was not going to happen because no law was, after it had already been approved, you couldn't go back and outlaw it.
Correct. Amity already signed a contract and they were ready to go.
Yeah.
So,
Now
so they
it's
were
been
just,
installed. So I guess the question is,
But
going forward, if other fields were going to be proposed to become artificial turf, do we want to have something in place that's protecting the environment in Woodbridge? So let's bring it forward to the selectmen and ask if they want to either reconsider or not.
I'm fine with that. What do you, is there any tracking going on currently or anything being measured about this, about the current situation?
That's a very good question. Maybe we can ask that.
so
mean-
keep in mind, Sheila, once you put this on the agenda, and I'm not saying don't do it, but once you put it on the agenda, those people, the people who are anti are going to come out all over again. And you're going to have a very, very significant outcry, and and demonstrations before the Board of Selectmen. It's been very quiet, but again, that's up to you guys and the Board of Selectmen. I just want you to be aware of that.
Jerry, what about another question? So suppose that it does sound like if this stuff does get into the environment, that it really isn't healthy. So we ought to take some precaution if it's going to become a real health issue. But that if we were to pass such an ordinance, and 8 to 10 years from now, when these turf fields typically need to be removed and redone, what is your opinion, if there is if it's possible to have an opinion, what is your opinion about an ordinance that we pass now affecting a new installation after the old one wears out?
I think that ordinance would prevent a new installation, even though it's an existing field with PFAS perhaps in it. I don't think they'll be able to replace it with that material again. Keep in mind, I just want to say, I know the legislature, the state of Connecticut, has a committee that's studying this. And I think they're supposed to be coming out with a report very, very soon, and maybe some statutes. I think we should find out, Sheila, first about where they are, what they're doing, before you bring it up.
Yeah, why don't we just advise the Board of Selectmen? We'll do an ordinance committee report at the next main Board of Selectmen meeting to say, we noticed this, but we know that there might be action in Hartford. Let's wait and see what happens. That session is going to be over in early May. So it's either going to happen or it's not going to happen, right, Jerry?
Correct.
And then we could revisit after that to see. I do think that there are alternatives. So even the field that exists now, if 8 years from now there needs to be new material brought in, there could be organic material brought in. It would be a different type of field, but it would not be as if we're telling Amity to take the field out and go back to grass. I don't think we'd be that severe.
Well, I think we have a obligation if we discover that there is some concern about a level of toxicity to say, find something else. I mean, that seems reasonable.
Yeah, we certainly heard from people who would like to see us protecting the environment in that manner.
I think what you've suggested makes sense. Let's do that.
Joe, what do you think?
Agree.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, so then the other piece on our agenda is the larger review of all ordinances. So David, you and I had talked a little bit at the Strategic Planning Committee about ways of kind of combing through, taking a look at what everybody's doing and what the costs are to taxpayers to support all the various efforts happening and looking for ways that we might streamline. So I thought if we took a look at all the boards and commissions that are embedded in ordinance, with an eye towards perhaps we can consolidate in some ways or determine that some boards or commissions don't need to meet on a regular basis. And if we change the ordinance so they don't have to meet 8 times a year, they could meet quarterly, something like that. Do we have other thoughts about boards and commissions in ordinance?
No. And in reviewing the ordinances, is this generally to look at all the ordinances for like, well, this ordinance doesn't make any sense, or this is no longer applicable? Or just the things that really relate to all of the different board activities?
I think it was broadly worded at the
Yeah.
Board of Selectmen level, so I think we do have a little bit of ability. I know Jerry Shaw has put in our packet the full printout of all the ordinances. I noticed one in particular that was in regard to conduct of the town meeting, which I thought was an interesting piece perhaps we should look at. And it says that some rules can be put forward at the meeting itself to be voted on, to be, this is how we're conducting that meeting. If we feel that we need, additional guidance for how we'll take votes, et cetera, at the meeting, I suppose we're able to, I think the ordinance says a committee should make a recommendation to the annual town meeting or the special town meeting. Jerry, did you notice that part?
Yeah, I knew it was there, but I mean, we don't have any committees working on it right now. So I keep in mind, we have lots and lots of ordinances. David sort of was alluding to. It's a monumental job to look at every ordinance. I mean, I can pick out 3 or 4 that I know is sort of moot, archaic, and really don't apply anymore. We can probably come up with 30 or 40 if we wanted to.
Yeah.
And I think rather than take out, you should see if you need any. So far, we haven't needed it, but it's a legitimate request or a statement that we should review those things every once in a while.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the time. But I think a full-scale review is going to be we're going to have to hire somebody. It's not going to be cheap. They're going to have to go over every ordinance coordinated with the charter, inconsistencies with each other. It is a big, big job.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Jerry, I think I've heard you say in the past that when we change the date of the election, that there's a mechanism that allows that state law to determine when people's terms on boards and commissions kind of follow from that. Is that, there's nothing that we need to do to take action, is there?
No, well, I think the Board of Selectmen at some point, within the next, say, 4 or 5 months, is going to have to just have a motion to recognize that any terms that are up on July 1st or June 30th, this June 30th need to be extended for 6 months, just the way the Board of Selectmen terms are extended. And then we've got to look at the terms of people who has scattered terms, who are not necessarily up in this June, but maybe up 2 years from then. So it is not a big job, but we've got to take a look at those.
Jerry, just a question. If the elected boards, like school board, those obviously have to move because they're coming in election.
Those are automatically moved, right? And well, not everybody is up this June, in June 30th of 2022. No, 2023, I guess it is. Yeah,
Yep.
23.
Yeah.
Some of the school board members have terms that extend beyond that because they were elected for a 4-year term.
Yeah.
So those are the ones that we have to just figure out whether anything needs to be done with those people. Certainly, everybody that's up June 30th, 2023, when the Board of Selectmen is up, get extended for 6 months. Just
But
the way
the appointed boards and commissions could still be appointed in June unless we change.
Yeah, I think I understand that the charter envisions that the Board of Selectmen is appointing for terms that match them. They can't appoint people for a term that's going to exceed their term. Right? So we're meant to be doing it at the same time, just like we sit down before we're actually sworn in. We have that new board meeting to make the appointments because the outgoing Board of Selectmen cannot appoint for terms that they're not in office.
Well, no, there are carryover members of these boards. Not every member of every board is appointed.
Right, new terms. You can't make new terms that are going to exceed your time in office. Is that how it works, Jerry?
Yes, well, that's why the old board is authorized to act before they actually take office, because the new board is authorized to act before they take office, because the old board can't do it. They can't appoint people for a term beyond the term that they expire.
Right. So that will
So-
happen June 30th, 2023, when Board of Selectmen does not leave office, because we're going to continue through to the election in November. We'll have to make appointments that also start even with our own terms.
That's right. You'll have to make those appointments that are up will have to be consistent and concurrent with the new term of the Board of Selectmen, which will start sometime after November of 2023. The Board of Selectmen is charged with deciding whether it's December 1st, December 15th, November 27th, whatever. A lot of towns, you'll notice some people get, some elected officials get sworn in on December 1st, some get sworn in on December 31st, December 15th. So the Board of Selectmen, that's something that the new law says the Board of Selectmen makes that determination. You've got a window of about 45 days from the election to determine when the new terms start. You're elected in November, the first Tuesday in November, but you're not sworn in until somewhere between 45 days and that date.
You just want to keep torturing us for another 45 days. We've already been extended all the way to November.
No, there are some towns that get sworn in the day after the election. Some towns actually do it immediately, and that's an option. The Board of Selectmen can do that. You know, you can do it November 4th. You can do it December 1st. You can do it December. You have 45 days from that point.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
All right, so I think as we look at the different boards and commissions, I know in some of the ordinances that created the boards and commissions, it talks about the date they start. So if we are looking to do sort of that review, if we start with boards and commissions, we can start to, correct this language. But Jerry, you said you thought we needed a consultant of some sort to look through this document with us?
So if you really are serious about undertaking a complete review and possible overhaul of all of our ordinances to look at consistencies, ambiguities, outdated things, I don't think that the Board of Selectmen or myself are equipped to actually spend the time doing that. There are groups, there are consultants that do nothing other than that. They do review of charters, we do a review of ordinances. If you want that to happen, I frankly don't think we need to go that far. I think we can take a much more abbreviated look at some of the ordinances if you want, and just try and make a report to see how it goes before we hire somebody.
Yeah, maybe that's the first step. We would
Yeah,
just make an abbreviated report to say, here are some things. Because from my point of view, if we can do things to streamline town government and use less taxpayer funding to enable the various things to happen. So if we took two boards and put them together, and therefore we don't need a clerk or someone doing minutes and posting minutes on the website and all that, because we've consolidated and we've streamlined, that's a good thing. I certainly wouldn't want to spend a lot of money to not gain anything from it. So why don't we do a review first to see where we think we might be able to make improvements, and if there's small things we can do, terrific. If it requires a much larger project, we'd have to go back and ask the Board of Selectmen if they want us to do that.
Good. Yep.
Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So I think the last thing on our agenda is to schedule the next meeting. I don't know how everyone feels. I feel like maybe we should try to do that in the next 2 weeks or so. Just so we can move forward on this littering piece. I know if we can, maybe what we can ask is for Jerry Shaw to ask Chief Cappiello when he could attend, and then let us know and see if we can find a date for this.
All right. So you're looking at something between April 4th and the 15th, excluding the 13th, of course.
And excluding, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I won't be back. I'm going to be away until the 18th. So you can do it without me if you want, or you can do it after the 18th. It's up to you.
Okay, and the 18th is the budget hearing, so we can't do it that. So
Mhm.
perhaps that week after that, the 19th through the 20th.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm,
away the last
And
the last
it
week of
seems to me
April.
that this is going to be pretty straightforward, right? I mean, Frank's going to tell us, he's going to look at the things and he's going to tell us what he knows what they're doing now and he's going to tell us what the need might be. So I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we can get it done. We can.
Yeah.
You
get
can
it
get,
done when
absolutely,
you're
you can get
away.
it done without me, sure.
Yeah, and then we'll bring it back to the Board of Selectmen anyway, Jerry, so
Yeah,
that.
it's not going to go anywhere. We're just going to try to gather the information. And
That's fine.
all right. Do you want to look at the 20th? That's,
Let's look at next week, Jerry, the 4th, and then the week of the
all
11th.
right, okay.
okay. And Sheila, with the charter review stuff, would you like us to?
Ordinance review. I don't want to get into charter review, but we should, I think.
No, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the first page and it says the charter. I just
Yeah.
got it. The ordinance review stuff. Do you want us to specific look through? What do you want us to do?
Yeah, why don't we all kind of take a little bit of homework here to look through? I would direct the attention mostly to the boards and commissions, because I think that we certainly heard from the town clerk when she was making her presentation on budget. She was telling us, how much there's effort going in. Maybe that's something we can find out a little bit more about. Maybe Tony Genovese can tell us what we're paying to have minutes done, et cetera, because I think a lot of times we're paying either outside people or we're paying overtime. So why don't we get a sense of what boards and commissions we have and what is the real operating cost of them? I know that CUPOP has asked several times that they don't really feel like they have a purpose. They don't know if they should meet only when called by the Board of Selectmen to meet, but that's not what their ordinance says. So they don't really have the latitude to do that. They have to schedule their meetings. So let's look through and then come back with our thoughts at the next meeting and we can have some discussion.
And maybe we could just ask the board members who liaison with these various commissions if, to some of these questions, maybe we ought to just come up with a series of questions like, does this commission need to meet as often as it does? What
Yeah,
are the,
maybe we move people to quarterly if they don't mind. Yeah.
and just have each board member kind of report back if, we can get some of the numbers on what it costs, and that might help us in looking at this. Okay.
Yeah, why don't we do this? So when we report at the Board of Selectmen meeting, we can talk with our fellow board members there about, really touching base with all the boards and commissions. Some of them don't have liaisons, so we'll have to have some special outreach to them, but.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Does to me. Yeah.
Good.
All right. Well, I think with that, we're safe to have a motion to adjourn if someone would like to make that motion.
So move.
Okay. we
Second.
got a motion and a second, non-debatable. All those in favor? All right. We're
Thank
adjourned.
you.
Thank
Thank you.
you. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Sheila.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe.